and responsible. OK, that means dollars ditch water, basically. And despite remaining coy about what's set to be announced, what's he said? He said there might be something.
Well, I'd say he's managed expectations and said there might be some cuts in some areas, but also might raise taxes in other places.
So, in other words, folks watching and listening, this is not going to make one darn bit of difference to your life one way or the other. And I put it to the former Home Secretary, Dame Priti Patel, what is the point
go on, that'll be
of
funny.
that, Dame Priti, because it's not going to win him the election.
And then we'll have to swap and sit on the sofa.
Why doesn't he just give the stuff away? Because he'll not be in charge anyway.
So, tempting though it might be, Eamon, good morning.
Good morning.
I think there are a couple of things here. Every Chancellor, and I was once many moons ago in the Treasury and I've been involved in 2 fiscal events, downplaying expectations is just part of the process, primarily because obviously there's a lot of market-sensitive information in the budget as well. So let's just give Jeremy Hunt that benefit of the doubt.
Well, we learned that, didn't we, the hard way with
So you're saying there may be something else, there may be a little surprise in this?
I'm hoping so. Right. Despite the doom and gloom that, is in the newspapers and I think has been briefed out and inevitably comes with the OBR. We haven't seen the OBR. All of that is going to be published this week. I take the view, and I've said this consistently, though, I do think the British people deserve more of their own money back. It's a fact. This isn't even a discussion point anymore. We have the highest tax burden in over 70 years.
Quick question. Why? Why do we have? Because we don't seem to be spending money on anything.
Well, we are.
But everybody's saying, every department, everywhere, no matter what it is,
teaching. The government's spending a lot of our money.
But people are saying you're not spending enough. You're not spending it in schools. You're not spending it in the rail. You're not spending it in hospitals.
So, that's a different discussion. So, first of all, we are spending significant amounts of public money. We're at the highest level. Now, you've just said people are saying we're not spending enough. That's a different discussion because if the public want more public spending, then obviously taxes have to be higher. That's a choice that any government and every government has to make. I was in a government back in 2010, 2015 in the Treasury back then, when actually post-financial crisis, difficult choices and decisions were made. Welfare budgets were cut back. I was the minister that reduced the welfare budget by £12 billion. That's a drop in the ocean now to what our welfare spending is. So, these are choices that every government has to make. I take the view, and I think Jeremy Hunt was on Camilla's programme yesterday. He said that he's going to cut back the size of the civil service, which is at a record high. We have over 500,000 civil servants. Now, even to shave a degree off that would cut public expenditure by at least £1 billion, and that would be great. Back again in 2010, 2016, we had around 400,000 civil servants, and that saved a significant amount of money. The costs alone, I think, came down to something like £11 billion. Currently, the cost of the civil service is in excess of £17 billion. So you can see the cost differential there. This is where we have to be, again, to be an agile government that's fit in the sense of financially sound money, conservative principles, but actually making sure the public keep more of their money. That's the key
And that
thing.
was something that Jeremy Hunt very much reiterated yesterday, his belief that actually the countries with the best economies are taxed at a low level.
They are.
But he also says it's deeply unconservative to cut taxes in a way that increases borrowing and isn't fully funding. Do you want him to increase borrowing?
I agree with that, by the way.
OK, and so how
we cannot keep borrowing, so the answer to this is we need economic growth. So what is so maddening, even if you read the papers today, where are the ideas about economic growth? And whatever one says about...
Liz Truss.
So whatever one says, there you go, nice segue about Liz, her tenure. She was pro-supply-side reforms. I think that's absolutely right. More housing, more infrastructure, investment and development. And the government needs to be agile about that, get the money into the country.
Well, they're doing a £360 million boost to British manufacturing R&D today. Is that going to cut it for you?
Well, we don't know, because you have to look at it over a significant period of time, right? No one knows what that's going to mean. How many more jobs is that going to create, for example? How's that going to grow the tax base? What does that mean for levelling up? Because in London and the South East, to be quite frank, the economy always does well. But what about other parts of the country?
Absolutely, absolutely. Why, could I ask you, are you being agile today? Right, now you talked about Liz Truss, you mentioned Liz Truss's name. Are you, and I think I know the answer to this, are you a Sunak fan, or why are you positioning yourself here? You were a very capable Home Secretary, you were a very energetic Home Secretary, you had lots of ideas, and certainly luck didn't go your way. There's lots of things that didn't go your way with what you wanted to plan. How can anybody be any different? They're not coming forward with the ideas that you had, it has to be said. So, are you with Sunak, against Sunak? Are you standing for post-election? What's going on?
I want my party to win the next election, and I want to win with Rishi Sunak, quite frankly. You know, this is not about anything else. I don't want a Labour government. End of story. I'm a die-hard Conservative, and I want my party to be successful. And that is why Jeremy Hunter said this last budget before the general election.
But could I say
throw the kitchen sink at it.
Yes.
You know, have the vision and have the ideas that our country desperately wants to see.
But if I was Jeremy Hunt, I was sitting here, I'd be bribing people. I'd be buying votes. Why is he not? Are they too
because
frightened?
that's not legal in the sense of
but funny that,
but I
to use
understand
that,
your point.
Yeah,
I do understand
on that turn of phrase, I mean, Ken Clarke's come out in the papers this morning saying he's sick of all this talk of tax cuts as a way of buying people's votes.
Sure. And, well, you know, Ken is an old-school chancellor, and I grew up admiring the likes of Nigel Lawson. Now, you have to be over 50 to remember who the great Nigel Lawson was as a chancellor. But Ken Clarke, look at their stewardship of the economy. You know, that language of sort of tax cuts and, you know, buying votes, they were never in that place because they managed the economy responsibly. Now, Jeremy Hunt is doing exactly the same, but I do think we have to have the big picture. We have to look at economic growth. We do have to look at reducing the size of the state. It's an uncomfortable discussion. Nobody wants to say that. I don't hear Conservatives speak about that. Means we will scale back.
Return of austerity.
We will have to scale back some government spending.
But would you welcome a... Because I know that you worked under George Osborne and you think he made difficult decisions. A lot of people talk about that as
they were the right
austerity.
choices.
So you would welcome austerity back?
Well, I wouldn't say austerity because that was a different set of circumstances back then. We'd had the banking crisis. Things were, you know, we had our credit rating was all over the place, and quite frankly, the financial markets were not investing in the United Kingdom in the way in which, you know, we wanted our economy to be sound. What we now need, and this is difficult because you've got to balance the books. Debt spending is at an all-time high as well, debt to GDP. We need economic growth, but with taxes at a 70-year high, we have to look at fiscal drag, where more and more people are being caught in the tax trap, where they're paying more in taxation. And that is because those tax thresholds have been frozen, and we need to actually do more.
Well, there's a big appeal for that. A lot of people are saying that and get in touch with us today. But where we're spending money, Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, he's talked about defence. He hasn't got much money for defence and whatever. And I put it to you, and you haven't got an office to worry about. You may have lots of other things.
Sure.
But can you just tell me the truth? The war in Ukraine, we don't need it. Do we want it? Is it our war anymore? Have we paid enough for it? A lot of people would say the reason we haven't got money for our own defence forces is that we're spending money in Ukraine, for instance, and that money could go to the health service, it could go to schools, it could go to lots of things, it could go to the army, the navy, whatever. What about Ukraine? Where are we at?
Well, first of all, it's about the choices that any government chooses to make. And on Ukraine, I mean, I was in government at the time when the invasion of Ukraine took place. We were unequivocal about our support for Ukraine. And, you know, to be quite frank, I think we still are. I was involved in those choices, resettling Ukrainian families, women and children to the United Kingdom. I think that's a moral responsibility that we chose to take on. And I'd stand by that today. The issue is, though, Eamon, how much longer is this war going to continue for?
Which leads to what? What difficult decision does that lead to? Does it lead to Hunt or whoever it is that follows him saying, look, guys, we've done our bit now?
I don't think so. I think we will continue, along with NATO and our allies, to give the support to Ukraine. I think that's the right thing to do. I think we are, you know, we're a leader, obviously, in NATO, but when we're head and shoulders in terms of the support that we give to our allies and to those countries that are standing up for Western values. I do think that's very important. If you vacate that pitch, then quite frankly, you know, you have to look at yourself quite morally in terms of where you stand in the world.
You talk about how you want the Conservatives to win and you want Rishi Sunak to win at the next election. The polls don't look like that's going to happen. You haven't ruled out standing as leader, possibly in that scenario. Would that be something you would consider?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know because, I don't want to speculate about what will happen. I can tell you now, I spend every week...
You wouldn't rule it out?
Well, look, I spend every week travelling the country and supporting my colleagues. That's what good Conservatives do. I want us to win the election and all my effort is focused on that, helping colleagues, actually doing what we can at a national level as well. I speak in Parliament a lot, on key bills and legislation. I want us to be successful. Rishi Sunak's success and the success of my party is also our national success, and really that's where we have to be. And as for the polls, the polls are what they are, but quite frankly, anything could happen between now and a general election.
Yeah.
And I want us to win. That is my bottom line, it really is.
What's not happening is the migrant numbers coming down. Massive thing for you. You had very straight, clear ideas on this. I think the public supported you a lot. You weren't able to get a lot done because of lawyers and Rwanda and various things like this. What can be done? Can anything? Do you actually believe anything can be done?
I do.
What?
I absolutely do. I actually think... I found the whole issue very disappointing right now. We saw another tragedy yesterday, in the Channel, which was just appalling, and I think it could have been prevented. I do think the French should do a lot more, quite frankly. We're paying them, I think, record sums of money. The sad thing is, I look back on all of this, we had a plan. We had a plan called the New Plan for Immigration, linked to the Rwanda policy, building Greek-style reception centres. And I'm sorry to say this, but people that came in afterwards, and in fact the current government didn't support that plan. And all we've seen with revolving door is people coming in with new ideas, and that doesn't embed with enough time, proper structural plans and structural reform that's required, including the lawyers, the legal profession. I put forward the one-stop shop, Eamon, where basically you no longer see, or you shouldn't see, asylum seekers going back to the courts again and again and again, appealing their cases. That still hasn't been fully implemented. And I changed the law to make that happen.
Yeah, do you know what, Ms Patel? I just do not think, however angry people are about this, and people are angry and they're quite frightened as well, I just don't believe they know half of it. They don't know what is going on. I was in Belfast at the weekend and I said to somebody, let's go for a bite of lunch here. He said, oh, no, that hotel's not operational anymore. I said, what? And I named this hotel. I said, it's always been, my whole life, it's always been there. No, but let's go here. That's not operational either. And we went 17 hotels in Belfast.
Extraordinary.
Have been commandeered for migrants. Now, we haven't had government there for 2 or 3 years, so which is part of the problem. But I just don't believe people have any idea what is happening to their lives. The Irish situation, you can come into Southern Ireland, you can head north. Once you get into Northern Ireland, you can head to Scotland, you can head to England, you can head to Wales. It's like unbelievable, uncontrollable. It's not just, everybody talks about what's going on at Dover and Calais and various things, but it's not just there. There are open doors all around the country, and I really just don't think people are even remotely aware. And when you talk about the housing situation, and I'm very big on social housing, getting social housing done and building the right amount of homes in the country, we'll never be able to do it. We will never be able to do it with the numbers of people that are coming in.
So I think, gosh, you've said so much there. You really have, and all of it is really important. When you look at, Northern Ireland, Belfast, everything that's going on now, functional government, we pray that everything comes together. But your fundamental point about, our borders and where we are right now, this undermines public confidence. And this is, again, where the government needs to do more. We saw last week, I'm not sure this was a great thing, but quite frankly, we saw the publication of a range of reports criticising the Home Office, our borders. These reports were commissioned last year. They were damning, absolutely damning. I haven't read them all. I literally skimmed through a few of them. And there were some terrible things that were said in there. Now, the government could change a lot of things operationally. I used to do a lot of the operations in the Home Office. Things are never perfect, but you have to have high standards. You have to show that your border force officers are checking, they're doing the right thing, that they're being professional and diligent. I actually put forward a whole proposal to reform border force. All of that went in the dustbin when I left, which I thought was a real shame. This is where public confidence becomes undermined. And also, Eamon, to your point, I don't think the public really understand the extent of what's going on, and therefore they feel uncomfortable about so many of these things that when they see something in the national newspapers, they think, God, that's terrible. And then, of course, it becomes a general point across the entire system, see, and then we're all damned.
I believe you're a straight talker. I do genuinely believe that you'll walk in and you say, look, this is what I want done. And when you meet with the French authorities, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that room, because you must just say, listen, Henri, here's the way we're going to do this, and then they say, oh, no, mademoiselle, no, or whatever, and I'm sure you have a bit of a set to with that. But when you left and when the new lot that took over from you did what they did, you haven't obviously been very praiseworthy of them. So what's the difference? What's the deal that's been done? Are they not bothered? Or are they just stupid?
No, I don't think it's either of that. I mean, it's difficult, it's complicated. On migrant boats, I've always said there's no one single solution to this, and there isn't. There absolutely isn't. And I've heard all sorts of facile things, just get in the channel and stop the boats, and that's just nonsense. It leads to people losing their lives, and it's dangerous. There are things, we've changed our laws, so the things that can be done, very simply, implement those laws, basically. Implement the laws and literally work diligently to make sure the legislation has been passed. Institute the one-stop shop, work with the Lord Chief Justice, work with the immigration courts and tribunals system, make them efficient, stop migrants going to the appeals court again and again and again, which, by the way, costs a hell of a lot of public money. Yeah. It eats into sit-in days of those courts and tribunal services, have deportations, remove people more swiftly once their cases fail, put them on a plane and remove them. And then, of course, we've got Rwanda. I have always maintained I actually do not believe that the government needed the legislation. We have ways in which you can overrule Rule 39. The government has said that they would do that. Rishi Sunak said he would do that when putting the bill towards Parliament. So just do the operational planning right now and start planning to get a plane to Rwanda. Yeah. The Rwandan government are geared up for it. They already host over 100,000 migrants, by the way. So they're more than capable of doing this.
But none from Britain.
But we're arguing at the margins about, is Rwanda a safe country? When clearly it is, when they're hosting people from, the EU-Libya transfer mechanism.
You have to take that up with the Supreme Court, though, don't you? They're the ones that said
well,
it wasn't.
We're going to battle with them.
And we're almost out of time, but I just want to ask you about the issue of MP security. And I know that Jess Phillips was once targeted significantly in this way, and she's been talking about how on a Sunday night you would pick up the phone every week 9 p.m. to call and check in on her, and how she said, aside from all party politics, she will never forget that, and she paid tribute to you as Home Secretary doing that. I don't know when you became an MP, but do you think there's more hatred in politics than ever before? I mean, we're hearing now there are 3 backbenchers that have round-the-clock 24-hour security. How has it got to this place, and how do we sort it?
So it's just in a different league, certainly. I became an MP in 2010. I think social media has a lot to do with it, to be honest. We use the term keyboard warriors. Death threats are just, common now amongst all MPs.
Do you feel safe or less safe than you used to?
I'm very conscientious. There are things that I do, around my own personal safety and security. I had 3 attempted assaults on me last year after I left being Home Secretary. Awful. And all of it was, totally unprovoked by me, just people feeling that they had the licence to come up and be physically and verbally intimidating and threatening. That is just not acceptable. Now, I think Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House, he deserves a lot of praise because he's done so much work behind the scenes, around MP security. I've been privy to those conversations. I've worked with him. I know the things that he's done in the last 6 months as well. I'm afraid this is the reality of the country that we live in. I want our democracy to be free-flowing and, I want us to be able to go around doing what we do. But I can say now, people do not speak as freely in Parliament as they do and would have previously on issues because they are worried. And they're not just worried for themselves, they're worried about their families.
Well, this is it.
And everyone that I speak to, I've had that as well. Our families are fearful and we have a responsibility to our loved ones as well to just be very conscientious and very diligent.
Well, Priti Patel, please stay safe. You're listening to the former Home Secretary there. Would she be a future Home Secretary? Would she be back in government? Would she not be? She's certainly very straight talking. What do you think about what she's had to say today? GBviews@gbnews.com.
Yeah.